What if there was a hidden code that runs pretty much our entire world? A kind of simple, elegant operating system that shapes everything, from our deepest thoughts to how our societies are built. Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. It's a fascinating theory called Infology, and it argues that this code is built on just two fundamental things: information and emotion.
Okay, so it all boils down to a really simple distinction. On one hand, you have a statement like, the temperature is 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just data. It's verifiable, it's objective. On the other hand, you have the weather is nice. That's not data, that's a feeling. It's an attitude about the data. And the whole idea behind the theory we're exploring is that this tiny little difference, well, it's the key to understanding almost everything about us.
So where does this all even start? Well, the theory says our very first language wasn't one of words at all. Nope, it was one of pure feeling. Before we could ever speak, we could feel.
I mean, just think about a parent trying to figure out why their baby is crying. Are they hungry, tired, in pain? What's the deal? That whole emotional back and forth is our original, foundational way of communicating. It's messy, sure, it's full of mixed signals, but according to the source, that's the system that teaches us our next, more precise language, words. Okay, now this is where things get really, really interesting. As humans, we developed language to be incredibly precise, with mathematics being the absolute pinnacle of clarity. But that old emotional system, it didn't just go away. The source argues it became a kind of bug in our software, hiding inside the very words we use every single day.
And there's a special name for these words: eponyms. They look like normal words, but they don't actually describe reality with data. They describe our perception of it. They are, quite literally, emotions disguised as words, carrying an attitude about the information, not the information itself.
And what's wild is just how common these are. I mean, look at this list. Eponyms are absolutely everywhere. We describe quantity as a lot instead of just giving a number. We describe quality as good instead of a specific measurable metric. We use them constantly without even thinking twice about it. So, here's a question for you. Think about the last commercial you saw. Was it based on hard facts and figures, or was it packed with eponyms like new, better, or trusted? See, because these words are ambiguous, and they appeal to that ancient, emotional part of our brain, they are incredibly powerful tools for persuasion. They often just bypass our logic entirely.
So how do these eponyms actually end up shaping us from the inside out? Well, this brings us to the next big piece of the puzzle: how society itself basically programs us, building what the source calls our internal model of the world.
From the moment we're born, every good job or don't do that is a piece of code. It teaches us what our social environment values. This constant feedback loop of emotional approval and disapproval is what builds our internal set of priorities and social norms.
And this slide just lays out the process perfectly. According to this theory, our conscience isn't some mystical force. It's basically a simulation of our society that we've downloaded into our own heads. It's this virtual society constantly running in the background, judging our actions based on all the approval and disapproval we've ever received.
And here's the kicker. This programming runs incredibly deep. This is why, according to the source, people so often exhibit social conservatism, why we resist changing our core beliefs. Because to question those foundational priorities, well, it can feel like you're invalidating your entire life story. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. What happens when you scale this system of social approval up to an entire society? You get what the source calls the architecture of authority. It's all about how that social approval gets packaged and distributed.
The theory defines authority as a kind of battery for social approval. An expert or a leader's opinion is powerful because it carries the symbolic weight of the entire group that approved them. This allows them to coordinate action way more effectively.
And this isn't just about politics. Not at all. This packaging of approval into titles like doctor, academic, or mechanic is what lets us trust specialists and build a complex society. It's the absolute foundation of the division of labor, making sure not everyone has to know how to do everything.
So this system of authority, it leads to a fundamental split in how we process the world around us. It essentially divides people into what the source calls a believing majority and a doubting minority, two very, very different kinds of thinkers.
Now, according to this theory, faith isn't the absence of logic, it's just a different kind of logic. It's a mental shortcut where the main question you ask is, does this new information line up with what the authorities say? The assumption is, hey, they've already checked everything, so I don't have to. This table just breaks down the core differences perfectly. The believing majority trusts that authorities have confirmed the truth, and their response to a challenge is usually some version of, "Who are you to say that?" The doubting minority, on the other hand, they want to test things for themselves against reality. So their response is, how can we test that?
And here is a really provocative point from the source material. Our school systems might be inadvertently training us to be part of this majority. By grading us on how well we can repeat information back, we get rewarded for aligning with authority, not for our ability to actually question it.
So, if our systems produce believers by default, could we deliberately teach people how to be doubters? This brings us to our final and maybe most radical idea, a technology of doubt, which is proposed as a necessary upgrade for our mental software.
This is a pretty wild idea. It proposes actively teaching a technology of doubt right in schools by deliberately introducing errors. The teacher would present flawed information, maybe even with some intrigue, let the students wrestle with it, and then reveal the mistake. Now, the point isn't to create a bunch of cynics. Not at all. It's about building minds that are more resistant to misinformation. It's kind of like a vaccine. By getting exposed to a controlled error, you develop the intellectual antibodies to spot inconsistencies and rely on your own analysis, not just blind trust.
So, the crucial point is the trade-off. This method of teaching would be slower, for sure, but the potential payoff is a society that's far more resilient to manipulation, and what the source calls intelligent stupidity, that state of having a ton of knowledge, but being unable to see when it just doesn't add up.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This theory of infology gives us a whole new lens to see our world, suggesting that maybe the most important skill we can learn is how to skillfully question what we're told. So what if the goal of education wasn't just about learning what's right, but getting really, really good at spotting what's wrong? What would our world even look like then?